Why the hell are you still binge eating after years and years of therapy? If you are, I want you to know I've been there and I can't wait to just give you a little bit of hard truth. This might be a very short Freedom Friday live because I'm just going to get straight to the point and share with you this kind of big aha moment that I learned the hard way on my own journey. And I see the struggle with so many people, and it can be this simple little piece of advice that can break open all the doors of change. Because the one thing we know for sure is that information doesn't lead to transformation. Insight doesn't change much at all unless it's paired with this one simple thing. So before we dive in, my name's Helen. I'm a coach who helps people achieve food freedom. What does that mean? I help people end years of compulsion around food and body shame, and we transform that into the simple ability to be able to eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, bloody think about it every 5 minutes about food all the time in between, or worrying about weight gain, etc. Now, I've been there. I've had my own struggles with food, and I've also been somebody who had some incredible therapy, which I'm extremely grateful for. But that didn't seem to be changing at all my binge eating. And I was a chronic binge eater. I was a daily binge eater. And the frustration I had of getting all these beautiful ahas with incredible therapists, I felt a lot of healing. There were wounds being repaired, and yet the binge eating was still showing up until I changed one simple thing, and it was this. I started to treat my behaviors that I wanted to instill as skills that I needed to practice. I had been involved in triathlon. I was a triathlete for a brief period of my life, and I began to think of my recovery journey as something that needed dedicated training and practice until I got better. And the reason I bring up triathlon is because the changes that we make to go from compulsion to food freedom also require a kind of juggling act of multiple different categories of skills and drills. So if you think of triathlon, it's swimming, running, and cycling. And you have to learn those, you can improve those, you can be coached on all of those things. And if you're working on all of those all of the time, you always sort of find one's getting better and the other one's getting slightly worse, but you're juggling, and over time you're improving all three of them to the point at which, you know, you could just get in the water without too much training and swim extremely well, run well, or ride well, because you've encoded that muscle memory into your body. Now, obviously, if you're competing, you want to be doing that at a much higher level. But for the general purposes of this discussion, if you start to look at the components of food freedom as skills that you need to learn until you can do them without thinking, until you can do them on autopilot, then you're winning. And while therapy is so helpful and so important for understanding how you began to overeat, what drove you into using food as a way to escape, numb, cope, etc., medicate of what was going on in your life, those insights do not translate into the action, and this is the key, the action that needs to be taken in order to change the habit loops. So when I think of compulsive eating, I think of it on a spectrum. Habits one end, that's like time, same place, a habit that you've done multiple times, and so you can kind of do it on autopilot without thinking, a bit like driving a car. And then there's addiction, let's call it food addiction, which, by the way, I don't think that you're addicted to food. The addiction is around the behavior and the completion of the behavior in response to the trigger, right? But addiction, because it tends to be coming from a place of pain, trauma, emotional turmoil, addiction tends to be a lot harder to break, but it really is the same mechanism. It just requires a lot more work, a lot more patience, and a lot more time in the saddle until those habit loops of addiction, with all its energetic and traumatic stuff that goes around it, can break. But the bottom line, whether you're just somebody who's like has an occasional snack accident and you want to stop that, versus somebody who compulsively is eating all day, every day, it doesn't actually matter, because the mechanism is the same. And we've got to do the same skills and drills to get there. We've got to take the same action, no matter how much understanding we have around what drove us to overeat or to be stuck in compulsion. The understanding will never get us to the what now. The why The answer to the why will never get us to the what now. And the what now can be informed by the why, but ultimately the what now requires action, action, action. And I think many therapists, and again, I really want to reiterate how powerful therapy is as part of this process. And oftentimes it's critical to the process. Many therapists aren't providing the tools, the practical skills and drills, the homework that that many coaches do. Coaches, by kind of definition of the word, often hand out homework, practical assignments that are done in between calls. And if you're working with a food freedom coach, she or he would be giving you tools that you need to be practicing in between the calls. And the reason that's happening is, in order to change the habit loops, we have to pattern interrupt the old habits, whether it's a habit of thinking, a habit of emotional dysregulation, a habit of chronic overwork and overwhelm. All of these things are kind of part of the balls that we're juggling as we do this work. Or it's just the good old-fashioned habit loop of same time and place. You've got to repeatedly break those with a pattern interrupt and something new. Now, here's the quick kind of the speed neuroplasticity 101. If you want to break any habit loop and encode something new, you break the pattern. So you see the loop, you break the pattern, and then you need to repeatedly do something, reward that new thing that you're doing, and reinforce that new thing that you're doing. And here's the bit that bites. And this is why everybody avoids this bit. This is why we want to just do more of the talking and less of the actual action. Because the minute you break that habit, you pattern interrupt, the reward that your brain has been using to get you to do that behavior again and again, and the thing that has been reinforcing that behavior is a chemical called dopamine, a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Most of us have heard of it. We all think it's the molecule of reward and pleasure, but it isn't. It's the molecule that's promising you and screaming you and begging that you do this thing so that you'll get that reward, that feel-good feeling. It's not the feel-good feeling itself. It's the molecules that surge in your system going, hey, let's do that thing again that's going to make us feel so good. And here's the stick. When you don't do it because you're trying to redirect into this new behavior, what happens? That dopamine screaming at you, and then you head into something called the dopamine tantrum. It's the wailing, crying, nagging, binge urge nastiness that anybody who's struggled with food will know exactly what I mean. It's the kind of energetic discomfort that you get when you haven't completed that old behavior. Your dopamine screaming at you to do the behavior. You haven't completed it. And now you're sitting with that horrible, horrible energy in your body that just won't go away. And you know that the easiest way to make that energy go away is to eat something. That's the easiest way. That's the easiest way. And when that dopamine is in its screaming, nagging, annoying tantrum phase, a lot of people will give advice, to go and meditate, go for a nice walk, have a bath. That's a lovely idea. But I'm guessing that those people who've given that advice have never dealt with the intensity, or what can be the intensity of a really big binge urge. That itch is screaming to be scratched, and it will nag and bother you sometimes for hours. Some people struggle with it for a full day, and they're just desperate to get to bed because they've been doing everything they can not to give into that craving, giving into that dopamine tantrum. And the only way sometimes to shut it down is to get to bed. Now, usually it doesn't take that long. When we're doing the work and we've been working all of our skills and drills, and this is just one of them, then the dopamine tantrums don't get so loud, they don't nag so much, and eventually you just don't get a dopamine urge, you don't get a binge urge at all in response to exactly the same trigger. But the only way to get to that place where it's easy and automagical is to break that pattern, is to sit in what I call the suck, which is the dopamine tantrum. Now, I give a very specific tool to all of my freedom fighters to use when they're in there to navigate that dopamine tantrum that little bit easier. It's very simple. It's not about meditation, because I've been there and I know meditating when you're feeling that binge urge is very, very difficult. But I'm not going to give you that tool today. I would far rather you took this information and recognized that it was time to put in some action and looked at joining a coaching program such as mine, or getting some kind of support, because this stuff is hard. And taking action on the difficult stuff often needs a little bit of accountability, some good tools, some strategy from people who know how. Just like going to the gym and lifting weights is hard. Very people are big time weightlifters on their own at home. They're usually doing it in a community, usually with a coach, because to do hard things, we often need a bit of accountability. So if I give you the tool, you'll probably use it a bit and then you'll stop using it. And then you probably will think, oh, well, that Helen, she doesn't know what she's talking about. This doesn't work. But actually, you need to show up for yourself again and again and again and again and again. So if you'd like to join the Food Freedom Fighters program, it's a small group of very committed people. I will pop the link below, but you can go to foodfreedomfoundations.com/call, and I'll explain to you exactly how the program works. And you can ask me all your questions, etc. But if you're not working with me, just make sure you are starting to investigate and look for support that will help you through this. Because we can all do the talk therapy until the cows come home, but the actionable, skill-based stuff is tricky, and it can be hard, and it can take time. Repetition, repetition, repetition. It's not repeat 3 times. You might have to repeat this for a few months, a few years, before you're really experiencing transformational freedom. But the nice thing about this, done right, pairing the new behaviors with good quality rewards, giving you skills that actually work quickly and strategically, and then pairing that with good quality reward on the other side, means that you're setting up dopamine loops in a whole new direction. And there's nothing better than when you've strategically built new habits that are laid down, hardwired with all that dopamine, so that when you don't do the new habit, you get the craving for the new behavior, the new habit. And that's the foundation upon which all of the work that I do exists. So while I do a lot of therapeutic style work with clients, ultimately the magic is in the repetition of the actions and the behaviors and the skills and drills that they learn and start practicing until they can do them without thinking. And the more you do that, the more you see a dropping off of those urges. They begin to just bugger right off, but they can only go away if you've taken the action to interrupt them, and you've used some simple tools that are actually effective to get through to the other side of a dopamine suckfest. So if you have been doing therapy and you're wondering what's wrong with you, why haven't you stopped binge eating, I hope this has been helpful, because Lord knows I was there too. And really, you literally might be 1 or 2 skills and drills away from completely breaking this habit loop. Because I can tell you one thing for sure. If you have been doing the trauma release work, the emotional regulation work, the head worm busting work, so the ability to think in positive, empowering ways, not in self-destructive ways that might lead to a binge. If you've been with your therapist working all of those areas, you're already most of the way there. You might need just 1 or 2 new quick tools and tips, really practical, simple things that you can begin practicing to break the back of the remaining and residual habit loops that are still there. But as I say, therapeutic work is just part of it. There's lots of other things to be done. So changing your relationship with food is, at first, it's like you're juggling these 5 balls. We've got to end the restrictive thinking, restriction with food. So we've got to end all those diets, replace it with nourishing meals that actually meet your body's needs. We've got to learn how to emotionally regulate. We've got to heal and release some of those traumas. And we've got to change that negative thinking that might be tripping you up as well. But once you're doing all of those, no matter what you do, you still got to do this 5th one. And that's just simple, basic habit change, which requires a pattern interrupt and the ability to get through the dopamine tantrum on the other side. So you're not broken. You might be 5 millimeters from gold. I hope this live has really helped you. I know I didn't really answer a question today so much as talk about something that actually had come up in the Freedom Fighters group coaching this week. And it was just such a brilliant opportunity to share with you something that, of course, I think is obvious now. But I remember there was a time when I was sitting there thinking, why the hell is this therapy not working? Not realizing I just needed a few skills that I didn't have yet, practical steps that my therapist wasn't giving me that would help me use that therapy and break through the habit loops that were still in place. All right. Have a beautiful Freedom Friday. I hope you have a weekend full of little freedom delights ahead. Maybe you get through a few of those dopamine tantrums. And if you do, make sure to reward yourself. Make sure to be like, yeah, high five or high five. Make sure you give yourself at the very least a little verbal or a mental reward so that your brain wants to do it again. The more you reward yourself for getting through those habit loops, breaking those cravings, the faster they will begin to stick, right? Because we're always going to do what brings us more pleasure. And that's what got us into trouble in the first place, did it not? All right. So I hope you break a few of those urges over the weekend. If you would like to join the Freedom Fighters, we will be starting an intensive 4-month acceleration process at the end of March. So join us in the month of March. Get in early. You can start diving into the videos and the workbooks. And at the end of March, we'll be working through a 4-month program in a really intense way to make maximum momentum. And then I encourage you to stay with the program and keep hardwiring all of that so that in a year, you will have a completely different relationship with food. So I'd love you to join us. Reach out, foodfreedomfoundations.com/call. I'd love to meet you and we can talk about how to get you started. Other than that, have a beautiful weekend. I won't see you next Friday because I'll be traveling, but I will see you the Friday after that. If you would like to join me live, or if you would like to shoot me your questions for a Freedom Friday, if you've got a struggle coming up that you feel I could help you with, you'd like a little bit of advice on something, then please send me a little email, team@foodfreedomfoundations.com, and I would love to be able to bring your question up in the Freedom Friday Live and give you a little bit of food freedom coaching and support as you head into the weekend, because we all know that's the hardest part of the week for most of us, right? All right. Have a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. What I will do, actually, next Friday, what I will do is I will find a juicy little video from the Food Freedom Foundation's program, and I will put that up in instead of the live, and you can have a little taste test of one of the many videos in the program, which I'm hoping that not only will you enjoy, but that you'll get deep value from, and more importantly, you'll take action on. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to get you results, and results only come with action done repeatedly and with reward on the other end. Okay, that's it. Thanks. Oh, that wasn't so. There we go. There's me at the beginning saying 5 minutes. No, it ended up being 20. But again, the passion is strong with me for the food freedom. So onwards and upwards, everybody. See you in 2 Fridays' time. And may the freedom force be with you this weekend. Adios.